9th chapter, 39th verse. I guess you have already read the purport and the verse, is it?
Yes, Prabhuji, we have just come.
Okay. Well, it's a long purport, huh? Okay. Om Agyanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. So now this verse Drishtva Tesham Mithonrinam Avagyan Atmatam Nripa Treta Adishu Harer Archa Kriyayai Kavibhi Krita. This is a verse. And I think you have read this, is it? My dear king, when great sages, saintly persons saw mutually respectful dealings at the beginning of Treta Yuga, deity worship in the temple was introduced with all paraphernalia. Okay, Treta Adishu Harer Archa. That's what this verse says. Treta Adishu means in Treta, in fact, even in Satyuga, Adi means in Satyuga, in Treta Yuga, when people saw, yeah, so when people, when rishis, they saw that at the beginning of Treta Yuga and also in Satyuga, people have become disrespectful, they are fighting. So they introduced Harer Archa. Harer Archa means the worship of deities, the system of deity worship. Now, here in Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada quotes this famous verse 12.352, Ritaya Dhyayata Vishnum Tetaya Majatai Makhai Dwapare Paricharya Ram Kalautad Hari Kirtanam. Famous verse we always quote. In Satyuga, people used to practice meditation. In Treta Yoga, because people were not so advanced in their consciousness, and some sort of sins started appearing in their life. For example, some rishis, they ran with the wives of another rishis. So actually no. In Satyuga, this marriage system was not there. Rishi Patni and Rishis were staying together mutually on a mutual contract. Basically, I think it was a living relationship, is it? Satyuga. They had a living relationship right then. They lived together, that's all. There was no marriage institution. But what happened, some rishis, they ran with the rishi patnis of other rishis. There was some like swapping type. You call it swapping? Yeah, there was some swapping. It was a crazy thing after Satyuga, and people got really mad. Uh, and uh, and and besides this, so there was illicit sex, and besides this, there was violence. Rishis were fighting. They started fighting together. Uh, Basically, for actually, so in English they call it as ego trip. You know this word, ego trip. So they were like, okay, if you are a rishi, I want to become Brahm rishi, and if you are a yogi, I want to become Mahayogi. All this kind of competitive mentality came right at the beginning of Treta Yuga. So this kind of things were entering the society. So what rishis did, they to stop this swapping and illicit sex, they introduced marriage system. So marriage in system was introduced right at the beginning of Treta Yuga. Now to do marriage, you need a yagya, isn't it? So you need yagya. Now yagya shala and also a temple that you need. So that is why there was a necessity of deity worship and yagyas. So what happened was, as Treta Yuga began, people became like this, more illicit and more competitive. So some kind of yagya sacrifices were introduced, because because people lost the ability to meditate. For meditation, you need a very peaceful mind. For meditation, you need a non-competitive spirit, and of course, illicit sex, no question. But because in Treta Yoga things went down, so that's why they introduced system of sacrifices. Okay, people were no longer able to do meditations which actually continued for years together, thousands of years. People lost that ability, both mentally and bodily. So this system of yagyas were introduced. But as Treta advanced, people fell down even more. And right at the beginning of Dwapar Yoga, what happened was it became a real chaos because at the beginning of Dwapar Yoga, what happened was these rishis they not only fell into illicit sex, they not only fell into competitive spirit, but they also fell into misappropriating, misutilizing sacrifices to fulfill their own desires. That happened. So these yagyas were very powerful, and their method was very powerful. And by doing yagyas, these rishis could actually fulfill whatever desire they wanted. And the fact that they were doing yagyas, and the fact these yagyas are mentioned in scriptures, and the fact that the results of these yagyas, which are promised in Vedas, are heavenly pleasures, rishis were losing the sight of their goal, which is Krishna consciousness. So right at the beginning of Dwapar, rishis, some great rishis, they had a conference, and they thought what to do. So God came as an avatar in Dwapar Yuga, and rishis they introduced a system of deity worship. Okay, leave yagyas, it's a problem there. So they introduced the system of deity worship, temples, paraphernalias, and right at the beginning of Dwapar, at the end of Treta, a manual of deity worship was actually introduced in human society. I don't know, Prabhupada is not saying, which was called as Pancharatra system. So God gave this knowledge to Narad Muni in 5 nights, and that is why this is called, because 5, that is called Panch. Ratri means nights. So because this knowledge was given to Narad in 5 nights, this is called Panchratra. And in that Panchratra, a detailed system of deity worship is described. So that was handed to Narad Muni. Narad Muni handed to rishis, and the rishis, they then introduced the system into human society. So in Dwapar Yuga, temple worship was introduced. That's why it is written here, Archa Kriyayai, Dwapare Paricharyayam. Paricharya means to follow the system of deity worship. Archa means deity, Paricharya means worship. This Paricharya is a technical term from Pancharatra text. Paricharya, Charya means to follow, Pari means to actually follow completely. So to worship the deity worship, to worship deities with an extensive and detailed procedure, that is called Paricharya. Now, so that's what God is telling to Yudhishthira Maharaj, that indeed in Dwapar deity worship is introduced, but in Kali Yuga, what happened was, as Dwapar advanced, things became more crazy. People lost ability to do austerities. People lost ability to remain clean in their mind, and what's that? People lost the ability to speak truth to others and to themselves, especially to themselves, and a slight portion of mercy, daya, that was still remaining in the society. So everything crashed basically. So that's why in Kali Yuga, God, Mahaprabhu especially, he came, and Krishna was thinking what to do in Kali Yuga, how to actually help people to attain. Can you please close the door? how to help people to attain liberation and perfection of life. And the only system in Kali Yuga was Harinam Sankirtan. So Kalautad Harinam Kirtanam. Prabhupada is commenting on that actually. See, Prabhupada is commenting. Satyuga, every person was spiritually advanced. There was no envy between great personalities. Gradually, however, because of material contamination with the advance of ages, disrespectful dealings appeared even among Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. That's quite funny. Now, one thing we can understand by this is even great people, even great Vaishnavas, even great Brahmanas, although they might be free of lust, but nobody is free of enviousness. That's not there. In fact, Narahari Sarkar Thakur, he has written a book, Krishna Bhajna Amrit. He has written a book, Krishna Bhajna Amrit. I think the 5th chapter. Out of all the chapters, we only have 5th chapter. And I think Mayapur released the 5th chapter under the authority of Jayapataka Maharaj. It's still there, that's translated. Narahari Sarkar Thakur, he actually he actually makes a very interesting statement. And the statement is that even in Kali Yuga, what will happen is even Mahabhagavatas, and that's a quite difficult statement to make, but even Uttamadhikaris, they will also fall into enviousness. What do you talk of Madhyamadhikaris and Kanishtadhikaris? So, in Kali Yuga, what happens? Even sannyasis, they will be envious of their own god brothers, their own sannyasis, institutionally, at institutional level and local level. You can't avoid it. Even gurus, they will be envious. So Narahari Sarkar Thakur says, don't be surprised, because this enviousness and competitive spirit, it's coming right from Treta Yuga. It's nothing new. Even in Treta, like who was that? Vishwamitra and Vasishta. We know the story. They were fighting like cats and dogs. Vishwamitra, especially Vishwamitra, he became envious of Vasishta, and he wanted to become Brahma Rishi. He was doing tapasya and whatnot he was doing. So, one point is very important. One point to take from this verse is that this enviousness and competitive spirit, that is the last thing to go in anarthas. We can be free, I mean to say, not free, but we can be relatively free from lust. We can be relatively free from anger. But this enviousness is very difficult to overcome. In fact, it's very difficult to identify the fact we have enviousness. Lust we can easily identify. There's no problem with lust. As soon as you get lust, you know, I'm out, my mind is out. Even a new devotee can understand when he is having lusty thoughts, when he's not having lusty thoughts. There's no problem, isn't it? But enviousness you will not be able to understand, especially at subtle levels. And more than enviousness, even more difficult than that, is pride. Pride of being a devotee, pride of being a guru, pride of being a temple president, temple manager, simply pride of being so pride of being an initiated devotee, that's also there. But you can never know that you're proud. That's impossible. Why? Because to understand that you are proud, you have to free yourself from pride. So if you don't free yourself from pride, you will not understand you're proud. And unless you're proud, you can't free yourself from pride, isn't it? So it's a loop. So that's why it's impossible to understand that we are having pride, because if you have pride, then you're blind. Pride blinds you and you can't see anything. And if you don't have pride, then of course you can see everything, and then that's no problem. then if you don't have pride, then that's no problem. But if you have pride, then pride will blind you to see that you have pride. That's the whole thing. And the example, beautiful example is given. We see the entire world, everything, trees, mountains, sun. We see everybody through our eyes. But the very eyes which are used to see everything, they cannot see themselves. You can't see your eyes by using your own eyes, isn't it? Except in a mirror or in a reflection of a water. Otherwise, you can't see. Even in reflection of water, even in the mirror, you can't see what is inside your eyes. You can't see. But you're using eyes to see. So if you're using your eyes to see, then you should be able to close your eyes and see what is within your eyes. But that's not possible. So that's the whole thing. To see that you're proud, you have to free yourself from pride. So how do you do that? It's a big circle now. But you can't get yourself free of pride until unless you know that you're proud. But how do you see that you are proud? Because pride will blind you. That's the whole thing. And that's a big complex thing. So that's the last thing to go. And Raghunath Das Goswami says that that actually Krishna, I mean to say, even if you're lusty, Krishna doesn't really has so much botheration about it, because okay, you can see it, and so once you see the problem, you can handle it and you can try to handle it. That's cool. It might take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, one life, that's okay. But the problem which you cannot see, what do you do with that? That's the most dangerous thing. And that is why Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes that that lust, lust you can help yourself with it, to get out of it, through the mercy of God. Of course, you need mercy of God, but by your efforts you can get out of lust, because you can see that. Anger, you can get out of anger because you can see anger. Greed, you can get out of greed because you can see greed, with efforts and mercy. But when it comes to pride, especially, that's the case what they are saying. When it comes to pride, and pride leads to competitive spirit and so many things, then then efforts will not work, because you can't see the problem. Then you need absolute mercy of God. There is no way. In that, Krishna helps. To conquer lust, anger, greed, that's a department of Balramji. So Bala means mercy, Bala means strength. So Balram means the strength of mercy. In devotional line, what is the strength? Mercy of God. So mercy, so that's a department of Balramji. If somebody puts effort, his own strength, Balramji give him will actually give him more strength to conquer that. That's okay. But that pride is a department of Krishna, because their efforts don't work. Krishna will help us to get over pride. And that's the whole thing there. That's what this translation is saying. Great sages and saintly persons saw mutually disrespectful dealings at the beginning of Treta Yuga. Rishis were fighting like cats and dogs. When Treta ended, they were fighting more so ever. Prabhupada writes, even Vaishnavas were started fighting with each other. So what to do? So in Dwapar, they introduced temple worship. Okay, do temple worship. So how did they solve the problem? Temple worship. It solved the problem because in temple worship, there is a detailed procedure there. And in temple worship, you need all kind of devotees. Cleaner is required, deity worship is required, cook is required. There's so many people required. And people can serve God according to their level of advancement and their status, of course. So then this sort of solved the problem, because everybody was engaged, everybody was respected in the service of God, and there was no competition. Okay, you don't have to meditate, and you don't have to do yagyas and achieve results and show to people. That was not there. God directly came into picture in form of deities, and he came in the center, and things resolved. But after Dwapar Yuga, when Dwapar Yuga ended, it became more worse. People were fighting for temples now. There was another fight. It was not to become a greater devotee, which was happening before. Now the fight was ownership. This temple is mine, this temple is yours, and which happens even now. It goes on. Now, this is my zone, that is your zone. They're so complex, things are happening. So this happens, and they're fighting for temples, and then finance. When temples came into picture, then people were actually. This is history, in fact. You can see the history of Catholicism, popes, all these popes. You can see the history of church. You can see the history of Islam. People were fighting for finances, for running temple. In fact, temple became not a place of worship, but temple became a place to generate funds, which is actually happening now to a certain extent. Everywhere. Sadhus have their own temples and they generate funds. People give funds to them and they live on their cost. So this was happening. People were using temple, which is there to make you pure and sanctify you, to actually exploit people. And not just exploit, but let's say to actually persuade them to do things which were not right. And so what was it called as? I just forgot. In Catholicism, there was something. So they used to sell a form. Catholics.
Indulgences.
Huh?
Indulgences.
Yeah. So in Catholicism, there was indulgences. They used to sell a certificate and a form that like from our side, we'll give you this if you keep this with you. If you give some donation, keep this with you, then you're promised to go back to kingdom of God. That was like crazy, That was happening. So and by the way, that's why Protestants, they came and they said this is complete crazy, And Protestants, what they did, they were like sort of Gaudiya Vaishnavas, isn't it? Because Protestants said, this church, we don't believe in church. This is a finance generating machine. We don't believe in popes. They're all corrupt. We just believe in the Bible, and we'll directly appeal to our Father, pray to Him. So we don't need a via media of temple and priest, which Catholics were pressing upon. So Protestants came. So I think Gaudiya Vaishnavism was like that, isn't it? Almost like that. We said Bhakti Santa Bhaktivinoda Thakur came and they said we don't believe in Smarta Brahmanas and their whole system of worship, to forget. We believe in Bhagavatam and Sankirtanam. Just chant. You don't need to have these priests and Brahmanas, they don't have a monopoly on God. So Gaudiya Vaishnavas are like so let me put it as Vedic Protestants, like that. We are also Protestants, and we protested, and Mahaprabhu protested against this whole system, and he said, okay, forget it, just chant the names of God, directly read Bhagavatam, chant the names of God, and go ahead. That was, and in fact, Mahaprabhu, he abolished the system of, not actually abolished, but he didn't give so much importance on Diksha Parampara. He gave importance to Shiksha. But actually, by the way, Protestants, they believe in that. They don't believe in papacy. Papacy. If papacy means, Pope is there and he will appoint his priest and then you have to be under them. And there's a whole, system there. Protestants said to hell with it. Forget it. So that was the whole idea of Kirtanam, Sankirtanam. Mahaprabhu brought a system which is not just chanting of holy names. It appears as chanting of holy names, but it is not just chanting of holy names. There were many things going on in the background. By introducing this Sankirtan movement, which was very revolutionary, he actually not abolished, but he made deity worship, temples, yagyas, and meditation very secondary. He said we don't require them. Directly by chanting holy names you can attain God. That's all. Finish it off. Yeah, you can use temples as favorable to chanting of holy names, as an assistance. You can use yajnas as an assistance, but Harinam is complete in itself. You don't need to depend on some priest, on some structure, on some person. You can directly come in contact with God through Harinam. It was a revolutionary idea because the question comes, how can you, how can ordinary man in Kali Yuga, who is absolutely like drowning in sin, have no idea of what is dharma? In fact, he doesn't know how to do pious activities. Let that alone. He doesn't know even what is pious and what is sin. The people in Kali Yuga, they don't even have guts to do sin. We don't have guts to kill anybody, isn't it? We are not even sinners. We are not even pious. We are something hanging in between. So how these people can come in contact directly with God? That was a big question which Brahmanas raised to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. In fact, even Catholics, they raised this question to Protestants. It was the same if you go in the history. Even Shias and Sunni in Islam, they raised this question. This Shia people who believed in the lineage. Now, if you want to understand, Shia are like Catholics, Sunni are like Protestants. So Shia is, how you can come in contact with Allah directly? You require us. You require a priest. You require us. We understand scriptures. We lead a pure life. So you have to have a via media. Simply by chanting holy names, you are sinners. That was a big thing, and that is why Brahmanas were against Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta. Even at time of Mahaprabhu, they were actually dead against this whole Sankirtan movement. Now, if you think in retrospect, if you don't know all these things, then you might think Mahaprabhu was chanting the names of God. What was the problem? Isn't it? If you don't know the history, then you might think, what was the problem? Let them chant the holy names. That's okay, it's not bad to chant the names of God. But the problem was not that they were chanting holy names. That was not the problem actually. Because even before Kali Yuga, people were chanting holy names. It's open to everybody. I mean, when people die, they chant Ram Ram, isn't it? You know that in India? When people die, they take that body and they chant Ram Ram, Ram Nam Satya, Ram Nam Satya. People were chanting, there was no problem. So then you might ask, what did Mahaprabhu do then? Unique. If chanting was there, holy names, then what did Mahaprabhu do such a special not such a special, but such a movement that was a revolution, that was not just a movement. So what he did was, he actually he didn't introduce chanting of holy names just. He introduced holy names he introduced Sankirtan with a concept that this Sankirtan can take you in direct connection with God without any via media. He did that. That was a big thing. That was a big blow to all the Brahmanas who were like working in temples and who were getting donations, isn't it? People used to come to them, give donations, and then Brahmanas used to pray for them, and the system was going like that. And people believe that okay, directly we can't get in contact with God. We are like downtrodden bhrastas. What we can do? We are sinful people. That was a big thing. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced this system, and so that is why these Brahmanas, they actually all complained to Kazi, isn't it? That was the whole problem with them. The problem is not the problem with them. One problem with them, one problem which Brahmanas faced with Gaudiya Mahaprabhu was that he was chanting the holy names loudly. That was one of the major problems, because they said, you should not chant any mantra loudly. You should chant in your mind. But that was sort of resolved because Mahaprabhu said, well, it is not a mantra in technical sense, because it doesn't have Om. Every mantra has Om, Pranav. it doesn't have a bija. Every mantra has a bija. Bija means Shreem, Kleem, I am, all these, there are particular sounds there. So just like Ganesh has Shreem, so like that, Krishna has Kleem. Om Kleem Krishnaya Namah. So that's a bija mantra, seed. It doesn't have pranav, that is Om. It doesn't have bija, that is a sound particular for a particular deity. It doesn't have namaha, obeisances. It only has the names Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare. So it's not a mantra, that's all. So that was sort of solved, like Brahmana. Oh yeah, well, it makes sense. It's not a mantra. It's just a combination of names of God. So if you can chant Ram, 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 Govind, 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 why can't you chant Hare Krishna? So that was okay, resolved. Even today, even if you go to m𝗲𝗱𝗶𝗹, which is actually the most technical, and let me say the most fanatic sampradaya as far as goes to follow Vedas, even they say Hare Krishna mantra anybody can chant, no problem, because it's not the mantra. They understand the technicalities. So they don't have a problem with us, in spite of the fact that they're the most knowledgeable in Vedas, and they say fine. So Mahaprabhu quite solved that, but this point was not solved. That okay, everybody can chant, but they need us to get connected with God. But now you're saying that now you're telling the public you don't need them. Simply sit in a house, clap, chant Hare Krishna, directly come in contact with God. That was completely not acceptable on many grounds, on financial grounds, on probably technical grounds, even on philosophical grounds, because they said you are sinners. You are sinners. Simply by chanting holiness, what you can do. So, you see, Mahaprabhu's movement was very revolutionary. It was a revolt. It was a revolt. It was not simply chanting holy names on the street in ecstasy. That was there. But that ecstasy on the street was a sort of happiness, and was actually that ecstasy was a weapon to tell those brahmanas, we don't want to follow your system, you're nonsense. That's how it went. So and that was a big thing. That is why Prakashanand Saraswati, he was really fried when in Kashi, he was really fried when people told there's a saint Mahaprabhu, he's always chanting Hare Krishna. He said, come on, crap, chanting Hare Krishna. They should read Vedas and they should come to us. So, but Mahaprabhu was chanting Hare Krishna, he was happy. And the more happy he became, the more fried they became. That was the idea. that was Mahaprabhu's system. So Mahaprabhu was bringing a revolution in the society. He was not simply a mad person chanting on the streets. That was not the idea. And that is why, you see, that was the spirit of Sankirtan movement, revolution. To revolt against society. His dance was a revolt, his smile was a revolt, his chanting was a revolt, his ecstasy was a revolt against the entire system, against the entire material fabric which was existing at that time in the society. And Bhaktisiddhanta understood this. And that is why Bhaktisiddhanta said, come on, you can take your mridanga and kartala and chant on the streets. That's very nice. But more than that, the spirit of Mahaprabhu's movement was not just to roam around in streets. The spirit of Mahaprabhu's movement was to revolt against the entire material civilization. And Bhaktisiddhanta then introduced many other avenues, many other fronts where he revolted against material civilization. Prabhupada came like full force, he was criticizing scientists, he was criticizing philosophers, he was against politicians, he was against the banking system, he was against petroleum industry, he was against all these corporates, he was against buildings. So what he was doing? So Gaudiya Mutt said, what the hell he is doing? Abhay Charan this is like crazy. Bhagavatam is writing all these things. He should have written chant Hare Krishna and Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna and chant on streets. Prabhupada didn't write that because Prabhupada understood and Bhakti Santa understood the spirit of Sankirtan movement. The spirit was a revolt. And in modern times, you have to revolt at many fronts. Mahaprabhu revolted, Prabhupada revolted, and that is called Sankirtanam, by the way. Sankirtanam is not just chanting and dancing. That's not the idea there. That is a part of it. That's okay. But to speak against this material civilization, that is Sankirtan movement. And when Bhakti Santa said this, nobody understood this. His god brother said, come on, he's crap, we should come to Radha Kund, sit and chant around 64 rounds, meditate on peacock or some gopi, and that is given in scripture. Of course, we understand that's given in scriptures. That's given in our Gaudiya Vaishnava books, Bhakti Ratnakar, Prem Vivarth. We have read that, but that is not what Mahaprabhu came to teach us. That was a part of teaching, or maybe that was a teaching. But the spirit behind that teaching, that we have to catch. People who live by the words, they always get deluded. And people who live by the spirit of words, they advance. That is why you see one of this, I think in Bible it comes, Christ, he says, those who read letters, they are Satan's follower. Those who understand the spirit of letters and the spirit of law, they are followers of my Father. He said the exact statement, I forgot, but that was the statement he made. So, yeah, Hare Krishna, chanting, Sankirtanam, that's what we see. But we have to see the spirit behind it. The spirit was complete, absolute revolt. That was the spirit. And that's what Mahaprabhu came this. And you see, so Kalautad Hari Kirtanam. It's a big statement. You see, even now we say in Satyoga the method was meditation. Now what is meditation? Now you might think meditation means sit and cross your legs and do something Ida, Pingla, Chakras and Om and all these things. But that's not meditation. That is what you see. But there are many things which you can't see. If you can see what cannot be seen, that is knowledge. If you see what you can see, that is not knowledge. That is in Sanskrit it's called as he's a chamar. Chamar means a cobbler who works with the skin and makes shoes. That's all. You're simply seeing the skin of what is happening. So meditation is about something else. It is not just doing all these gymnastics. If you go to any meditator, any experienced meditator, Patanjali, yogi, if you meet, every yogi will say that all these pranayam and all these, pranayam and all chakras and all these, this is all for neophytes. Real meditation is doing nothing. If you talk to any meditator, I would say, oh, what's happening? There's so many technical things written there. I should do this. I should control my breath, chakras and this. No, if you go to any advanced yogi, they will say, simply sit and watch yourself. That is real meditation. These neophytes, they just do all these kind of things. That's required, but when you advance, you understand this is not the point. So that's meditation. Similarly, what is yagya? Yagya doesn't mean ghee and bricks and you make something and then swaha. That's not yagya, by the way. Yagya means sacrificing your ego. That is yagya. So what you're doing in that yagya, people are seeing ghee and some kind of Vedi that they make, and then priests are sitting, Ritvich are sitting, Hotri sitting, they're chanting mantras. It's an elaborate thing. There's a fire, all these Vedas they're chanting, but that's the external thing. That's required. But the spirit behind that is, what is the spirit? The spirit is, by doing all these things, they're trying to sacrifice the ego in the lotus feet of God. They're trying to sacrifice their desires in the fire. Swaha. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. I want a pleasure. That's what they're trying to do. And deity worship, come on, temples and big structures, and that's a detailed thing. But that you see. But the spirit of deity worship is nothing like, is nothing what you see. The spirit of deity worship is to actually impress your soul with the form of God. That form of God which is there in front of you, you're trying to, um, yeah, so you're trying to internalize the beauty and the form of God in your soul. That is what is deity worship, by the way. If you don't do that, everything is useless. You're simply in some rituals. And the spirit of Kirtanam is a revolt. It's a revolt against society. And Prabhupada and Bhakti-San Thakur, they really understood what is Sankirtan. And others who just chant and dance and they say Prabhupada, many of his god brothers, they were saying Prabhupada, his Bhagavatam is useless, and what Bhakti Siddhanta, what he is doing, he's speaking against everything. They're not devotees. Why they're speaking against people and the society? They are like all envious people. They are not saints because they like to criticize. You see, that's the point. But what Mahaprabhu was doing, he was criticizing by his dancing. His dance was a satire. You understand what's a satire? You know satire. Satire. So how do you explain satire as? Easily, satire. What do we call as satire as? His dance was a satire. I can't explain what satire. Does anybody?
Comedical mockery.
Yeah, Vyang, but I need in English.
Comedical mockery of something, usually.
Yeah.
Intelligent.
Yeah, satire means mockery,
Sarcastically.
sarcastically. Satire is,
There is a difference.
you're mocking somebody using comedy. That's basically satire. By using comedy and by using jokes, you're trying to mock somebody. So one way to mock somebody is to ridicule. So
Saying something.
what's that?
That's what. Humorously saying.
Yeah. To mock somebody humorously, you can say like that. So that his,
You say it like roasting.
was that
Roast.
roast? I don't know. Yeah, roast is a YouTube social platform. Yeah, you can say roast. Yeah, if you understand roast, that's about it. Roast. So that was Mahaprabhu's movement. It was a satire, it was a roasting. It was he was not showing that I am happy. First of all, Mahaprabhu said, don't express your happiness in public. Don't show your sentiments. That was a rule. If any Vaishnava showed his sentiments on the public, he's not a Vaishnava. Narottam Das Thakur says that's not the Vaishnava style. But Mahaprabhu was showing on the streets. So his purpose was not to show, his purpose was to actually mock them. That you are complete nonsense. You are wasting your life, you are wasting your time, you are exploiting people, you are actually overindulging in yourself and trying to oppress and suppress ordinary public by your knowledge. That was his satire. That was his mocking. And Prabhupada did the same thing actually. Prabhupada understood that spirit and he said, okay, fine. If Mahaprabhu came to mock others and if Mahaprabhu came to revolt, I will do it in all fronts. By lectures, by books, and by morning walks. Morning walks, he was very heavy on scientists, isn't it? You read, he used to discuss and used to smash scientists and philosophers. So what he was doing? Now Gaudiya Math and not all Gaudiya Math, but some of his brothers, God brothers, Gaudiya Math, Radhakund people, they say this Abhay Charan Das, he's like complete nonsense. What he's talking nonsense? He's talking about this worldly news, and he should simply sit and chant. Even Gaur Swaraj Babaji, Bhakti Saraswati Thakur's guru, he was little confused. He told Bhakti Siddhanta, why you're making all these temples and why you're preaching and you're criticizing everybody? Come and sit with me and chant the holy names. So Bhakti Siddhanta said to him, that, do you think I'm doing something wrong? So 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹, he was little intimidated when Bhaktisanta said this. He was a disciple, Bhaktisanta. Bhaktisanta said, do you think I'm doing something wrong? 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹, he didn't say anything. And he said, okay, I'll ask Mahaprabhu. And when Bhaktisant Thakur came the next time, Gaur Kishoras Babaji, he was actually clapping, and he was saying, Manjari has come. The most intimate associate of Mahaprabhu has come. He understood that actually real Sankirtan Bhaktisanta was doing. He was doing things. So you see, what you see, sometimes that's not truth. And what you can't see, which you don't want to see, that's a truth. That is how. And so there's a saying in Sanskrit, by the way, alpam pratyaksham, analpam apratyksham. Sorry, I got it wrong. Yeah, right. Alpam pratyaksham, analpam apratyksham. That is a saying in Panini, that what you see is very less. What you don't see, that's the major part of it. It's just like iceberg. What do you see when you go on a ship? It's only the tip. Only the tip. But the major part of it is beneath. And that's what the cause of Titanic, isn't it? This much is, when it collided, it was a big thing beneath the sea, and it was messed up. So and that's the function of a saint and a guru, to show you what you cannot see. Otherwise, you can read books and Google it and just do your own thing, But that's not the whole thing. That's not the point. Guru will give you eyes, isn't it? Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena. He'll give the eyes by which you can see behind the letters. Letters are important, but behind the letters, but we'll be able to see from what spirit that letter is coming. What is the idea behind those letters? That's the whole thing. And that's why Prabhupada wrote purports. Why Prabhupada purports are important. We can simply read translations, but we are not able to see the idea. Prabhupada has seen the idea behind the information. Words is an information, but the idea behind information, that's what Prabhupada wrote in purports. And that's where Prabhupada purports are full of banking system, petroleum, isn't it? Rascal. These words are coming. Politicians, philosophers, leaders, donkeys, dogs and cats. Why? This Gaudiya Math people, they became really messed up, and they said, this is the worst Bhagavatam of the century. What is this purports? This completely crazy purports. Who writes like this? They even said, one publisher for Gaudiya Math, so I'll not tell the name, but he was like Math in charge. He was sannyasi, Prabhupada God brothers. And he published his own Bhagavatam, and in his preface to Bhagavatam, he wrote, he mentioned that one Bhagavatam which is translated in English, and it is famous all around the world by one very popular, famous founder, Acharya, that's the worst Bhagavatam I have ever seen in my life, because that person who has written Bhagavatam, he has not even read the commentaries of previous acharyas. And why? Because he's criticizing left and right, and he's using dogs, cats and rascals, and none of our acharyas have commented like that. So he wrote like that, and it's that Bhagavatam is still available in Mayapur if you go in one of Gaudiya Math. I'll not tell you the name, you research yourself, but it's a famous edition of Bhagavatam. But the question is, why Prabhupada is doing like that? That when I came to Krishna consciousness, when I read books, in fact, all of us, when you read Prabhupada books, the first impression is Prabhupada is not a saint. Because he's using abuses. He's using such a foul language, isn't it? Many people say, what is this Prabhupada? Does any saint say rascal, dogs and cats, prostitutes? Nobody. Prabhupada has even made very heavy statements, by the way. So when I read, I thought, Prabhupada is not a saint. What kind of saint he is? A saint should be merciful. He should use good language. You should always write, say Hare Krishna, Govinda. But later I understood that actually not only Prabhupada was a saint, but the other way around. So actually not only Prabhupada a saint. Why he was a saint? Because the fact he was using this foul language, it makes him a saint. And why he was like that? And not only Prabhupada was like that, but Mahaprabhu was like that. He didn't use, by the way, what's that verse? Uh, yeah, Mahaprabhu sometimes used such foul language. He told Raghunath Das Goswami that your uncles are warm in a stool. He told him. And Mahaprabhu sometimes he used very bad language. But Mahaprabhu didn't use bad language, but Mahaprabhu used mockery. He chose that style of mocking people by dancing on the streets. That's all he did. He was mocking them. So Mahaprabhu was mocking people by actions. Prabhupada mocked people by words. It's the same thing. Then I understood, oh, actually, Mahaprabhu was doing the same thing. He was not simply mad person happily chanting on streets and some kartal, some ritang, and that's it. If that was the point of our movement, I would have never joined ISKCON. Simply chanting on streets with mridang and kartal, what is this? These are crazy people or what? These are mad people. These are sahajyas. It seemed like that, because before joining ISKCON, I saw some. You see in India, people, so many saints come with that kartal to actually beg. Most of these beggars, they come and these saints come and they stand in front of the door and they do some kirtan, Ram, 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 and then they, we are supposed to give them donations. So I used to think these Gaudiya Vaishnavas are like that. They are beggars, they do kirtans, but that was not the whole thing there. Mahaprabhu's movement is very, very deep, very deep. But you should have eyes to see what is Mahaprabhu saying. And in fact, we can understand Mahaprabhu through Prabhupada. That's the whole, through Bhakti Siddhanta, because what they are doing, is the spirit behind Sankirtan movement. In fact, Srila Prabhupada said, preaching to scientists, that's Sankirtan. So if a devotee, he is always reading science and is trying to think how to defeat them, you might think they are wasting time, they should chant and they should think of some higher stuff. You can do that, that's no problem. But this is also Harinam Sankirtan. This is no different from chanting. That's the whole idea which Prabhupada brought. There were many artists at Prabhupada time, Jamna Mataji and all this. Not Jamna Mataji. Who was a artist there who was painting for Prabhupada? Jadu Rani Mataji and Govind Mataji. They were all painting for Prabhupada, and Prabhupada, like painting requires a lot of dedication, isn't it? A lot of time. So they many times they were, and Prabhupada was very pressing because he needed paintings for Bhagavatam. He wanted to put that photograph leaflets. So he was very demanding, pressing. So they were very tired. They had to spend 24 hours. So they said, Prabhupada, we are tired and we can't chant properly. But anyway, we chant. And Prabhupada said, well, your painting is chanting. Your painting is chanting. Because we are going to put your paintings in Bhagavatam. And this Bhagavatam we'll distribute all around the world. And this Bhagavatam will actually convince them that you are wrong and we are right. Krishna is right and you are wrong. So that's what is Sankirtan movement there. So, and that is why Mahaprabhu said, Prem Prachar ar Pashanda Dalan. No? Sankirtan movement has two things. To explain, to help people understand what is love, and on the other hand, to help to actually counteract and revolt against all wrong ideas or all those ideas which are taking us away from God. That is our duty. Then your Sankirtan is complete. So you might not be a great preacher to do that, that's okay. But at your level, you can speak against the society to whoever you meet. like in a very presentable way, of course, so that they can understand that, and then explain them who is Krishna and how to love him. Then actually you are complete. Then your mind will be focused on God. Otherwise, we'll chant, our mind will go round and round and round. Why? Because we are not doing Sankirtanam. We are doing a ritual. Hare Krishna, finishing a rounds. That's a ritual. Ritual means you are following a procedure without understanding the spirit behind it. That's a ritual. So most of us, if we don't understand all these things, we are doing rituals. But once you read Bhagavatam, this purport, Prabhupada's purport, very nice, then we will understand the spirit behind it. So yeah, that's what this verse is all about. There are more points in this verse, but I don't want to touch that. I think this point is more than sufficient. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anybody wants to ask anything? I want to end up there.